Aha! All right, Peter, how's it going, my man?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, I am good. Thank God. You know, the last couple times I've been doing this with this goddamn app, it has been a pain in the ass. So
Awesome.
they,
Yeah,
I appreciate I appreciate it coming through, and thank you very much first and foremost for your time today, dude. How sick, man. Appreciate it.
absolutely happy to be here.
Sweet. All right. So here on Growing on You Live, basically, I got an initial introduction question. Then the remainder of the interview is about you and your craft, some of the bands, some of the stuff that you got coming up. And then I have one finale that I wrote just for this episode. So if you're comfy, my man, we're going to dig right on in.
Yeah, sounds great.
Sick. All right. Let me ask you, if we're coming through, my wife and I do a little travel, and we're coming through somewhere local to you, whether it be maybe Chicago way, whether it be maybe even Kentucky, what's a local restaurant or a food spot that is a must stop? And what do we have to try?
Yeah, for sure. So we're big on coffee. At least me and my friends, like coffee is kind of our thing.
Yeah.
There's a ton of really great places here. Sonegros is a coffee shop that we're real big into. Um, there's another one that's name is just completely escaping me now because I'm never available to go with them. I think Last Stop or something like that. There's kind of a more chainy type place, Heine Brothers, that kind of works out just because it's
Okay.
everywhere and we can get that pretty easy. As far as food, there's tons of great local places here. There's like a hot chicken place called Joel's that has like an amazing vegan option. So we end up at
Ooh-wee.
that spot a
Nice.
lot. There's a place called Ramsey's that I really like that's been around forever. As far as vegan food goes, I'm not vegan, but we end up at a lot of vegan spots. There's a place called V Grits that a buddy of mine from like decades ago has been like the chef there for a while, and it's just awesome. So that's probably some good spots to jump out. Like for the non-vegans, vegan V Grits hits is the like closest to what they might like, anyways. At least
Sick.
my opinion. So.
Yeah. Okay. Are these all spots more in Kentucky way?
Yeah, that's all Louisville.
Oh,
Those are all
okay.
kind of
Gotcha.
the super local
Yeah.
spots. Yeah, I know. I'm probably not giving you too much if you're in other cities. There's
No,
not.
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, cool.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, because I knew that you had mentioned kind of through us messaging that you had just recently moved back to Louisville, correct? Or local
No, no,
around
no,
there.
no. I've been here. I mean, I lived in Cincinnati for a while in college, but I've been in Louisville since 2007. I grew up here. I
Oh,
live like
okay.
2 miles from where I grew up.
Well.
This is yeah. My home base is actually pretty central to where I've done most of my life. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Nice. Nice. All right. Let's dig into that a little bit. So, as far as growing up and having that spot, let's dig into earlier interests as far as music goes. As a young man, what were albums, bands, or songs that really resonated with you? Maybe even establishing an interest in music.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a very like musical household. My dad always had music playing way too loud, and so that was great. That's certainly neither one of us can hear, which is great for life. Um, I've kind of grown to appreciate that my dad liked really good bands, but really bad albums by those bands. Um,
Okay.
like I listened to a lot of the like Robert Plant solo stuff growing up, which I don't know why that was a thing. Zeppelin wasn't on, but that was. We
Weird.
listened to like
Oh.
Tango in the Night by Fleetwood Mac, but never, like the self-titled Rumors, which I love that album, but it's just kind of a weird, not what I ever would have expected.
Yeah. Totally.
I'll be honest, like what kind of got me into metal and that there were like kids across the street from me that were 5 and 6 years older that were like skate kids. And their dad built them like a small ramp, and they would just ride the ramp forever. I was an awful skateboarder as a youngster, but they would kind of let me hang out with them if I rode my bike off the ramp and crashed every hour or so, because I'm terrible at doing that too. But I was, fearless enough to like ride off, wipe out. They'd laugh, and I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm with them." And like
Yeah.
they were big, just thrash metal heads because they were, 12, 14 years old in the, late 80s. So like they would give me their old mixtapes, which was just like the big four. So tons of Metallica, tons of Slayer.
Oh,
I didn't even know what
nice.
I was listening to. I would die to still have those today, because I'm sure there's potential for there to have been other cool stuff on there. And there was no way for me to figure it out. It was literally just a blank tape of stuff. But I definitely remember the early
Damn.
Metallica stuff. Like Black Album came out, I had to have that because I knew that name. Mom and dad were not letting me buy Slayer tapes. That was
Yeah.
that was certainly not happening. So I kind of held on to it. So it's more just like memories of those things when I was a little bit younger. Um, as I kind of grew up, I was like, okay, let me go ahead and see what South of Heaven actually sounds like as a full record. So got into a lot of that stuff, and that kind of drove me into the mid '90s metal world and kind of the new metal that came from that. Like I lived through the Jinko era and some of that. I still ride
Yep.
super hard for Deftones. I lied to my parents about going to soccer or something
Yes.
at like 11 years old and caught them. I think Around the Fur was about to come out or it had just come out, and Adrenaline was still like definitely being pushed. So I had no business being at that show, and I'm sure my parents knew something was up. But got to see them super, super early. Like one had to be one of their,
Wow.
early US guys. So that was super cool, and that was it for me. I was in, and got in all those bands, and yeah, I was hooked early.
I love that. I love that. And you mentioned skating and biking and different things, BMX and whatnot. Were there different like skate tapes or like BMX tapes or anything, or maybe even video games that introduced you to different bands that you weren't aware of?
Probably not the tapes. Like I was so unique in my area for being into that. Like those two kids moved to Colorado or something by the time I hit 10. So at that point, it was
Okay.
just gone from my neighborhood. Like none of the other kids around me were really into that. So we just didn't. I went to my parents shipped me off to Catholic school in middle school. There was nothing close to anybody being into that there. There was like the one kid that liked Green Day. So he and I bonded over Dookie, which again, like age wise, that was super fine. But like he never dove any deeper than that. I didn't dive any deeper than that. Like we didn't really have the internet as a gateway.
Right.
My mom, there was a record store, Ear Ecstasy here that was like storied forever, and they opened up a branch on our end of town that was like 5 doors down from the grocery store. So my mom would let me like go down there instead of walking around the grocery store with her, and that was
Oh,
big on me, just
nice.
like exploring and finding kind of records that way.
Okay. What's the first album you remember buying like with your own money? May it be, something that you earned or an allowance or anything like
Yeah,
that?
for
What's the
sure.
first album you can remember?
So the first tape I remember buying was Nevermind. Thank You Smells Like Teen Spirit, the video. It was it. I had not
Hell
come
yeah.
across things like that that were readily available, and it as like a fourth grader or something. It was just that was it. And that record, I wore that tape out of my Walkman, riding back and forth to school, for sure. Like sitting on the bus, just flip it over and go again. I didn't have a cool enough Walkman to have the auto reverse, so I had to take it
Oh,
out and
okay.
do it the old fashioned way. And I actually remember the CD I bought Offspring Smash when I was in like sixth grade,
Oh,
which was kind of
sick.
cool because
Nice.
I forget what the track was, but they had the one that like kind of it had a little bit hard, just a little bit.
Yeah.
That kind of hit on MTV, so I watched that one or I listened to that one a ton. I don't know, it kind of bounced from there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that was kind of one of those things where, you mentioned it before the ages of the internet and different things where, it was like, say you have $10 that you earned some way. And it was like, it was a real gamble going and being like, this is all the fucking money I have. Like, if I spend this and this sucks, it's the end of the world.
Yeah,
Like, such, minute problems now as you grow older. But it's like, man, at those times that was real detrimental shit, and it was like, and if
dude,
it did suck, it's like, man, I have to
it was the
find the 10
best.
seconds in this at least that rules because
Yeah,
this is terrible.
dude, I that Ear Ecstasy, and there was another record shop too that once I was a little older and started exploring a little bit, I found they had the like for fans of tags on the records that you knew, and you'd be like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
like I'll give it a go. Like I loved Kid
Yeah.
Dynamite. I saw Kid Dynamite at a show, didn't know who they were, just happened to be there. Super cool band that I loved, found them, and it said for fans of, check out Lifetime. Okay, and I
Oh,
loved
nice.
Lifetime,
Okay.
but I had no idea. That was the first one I remember being like, this is such a hit. And again, not knowing they shared members, not knowing anything about the history of them, just being a young kid, like
Hmm.
that was amazing. So you're right. Like it sucked when you got one that didn't quite hit, or when you bought something having no idea. Like I was literally talking to our singer the other day about Agnostic Front and how the first
All right.
Agnostic Front record I listened to was Riot Riot Upstart, which was
Oh
a
man.
cool record, but not really what one would say is like an agnostic front song. So like I didn't
Right.
listen, like it was fine, but I didn't listen to them again for years. And everybody was talking about it. I was like, I don't really know why you are into this band. I was just way off what they sounded like. So I was a little
Yeah.
surprised a few years later.
Yeah, no, I hear you definitely, definitely, and another gamble too. I wanted to dig into as far as the cover art. Bring us back to like your local spot and choosing an album solely off of the cover art. What comes to mind with that?
Dude, yeah, for sure. I'm sure it's probably a relatively understandable answer. The Misfits skull was just
Oh
everywhere.
yes,
Like, and it still is. I firmly believe a
still
lot of
is for
bands have,
sure.
yeah, a lot of bands have had success based on like really, like notable, memorable sorts of things. Like, um, so I remember I knew the skull, and I saw like it was like, okay, I know that's the Misfits skull. I don't know anything about the Misfits, but I know that's the skull. I know that's sick. I need that. And I think I ended
Hmm.
up buying Earth AD because that was like probably the first one in the
Ooh,
rack, if I'm being honest, and I had no other reason to pick it. Great record, probably not my favorite Misfits records, but definitely gave me like, yeah, this is something I could watch or something I could listen to. Like, this is cool. This is punk. Like
totally.
that's when you're 13, 14 years old, it's grabbing that label and being cool with it was all you really needed.
Right. Or like
I'll be
Dead
honest about it.
Kennedys, like I mean that's you see some of those things or like bands with like Slayer for instance having like the DRI logo or a Dead Kennedys or something, like with Jeff Hammond on his guitar. It's like what the hell is that? Like so I definitely I mean I'm all there with you, as far as seeing some of that shit and like I got to figure this out. I don't know how. I have three
Right.
friends that are into heavy music, but I guess I'll see what I can do.
Absolutely. And I probably there were
or
less than three in suburbia, I promise you.
yeah. Okay. And it was nice too. Every once in a while, if you go to a record shop and it was actually somebody who listened to some of that stuff. We have a spot in Grand Rapids, a little ways away from me. But as far as you go in there and each one of the guys that work there, they're all kind of into their own collective thing. But if you bring up something, it's like, oh, hey, talk to this guy, and like that's that's the guy that you got to go to and you got to check out and you talk to him. And so that was always nice, back in the day when you didn't know what the fuck you were looking for. But yeah,
Yeah, for
I,
sure.
I love that. I wanted to dig into as far as you mentioned straight edge being an important staple in your life, and the lifestyle and the music that comes along with it. What was initially introduced to you that had that message that really resonated with you?
Man, so I started going to hardcore shows kind of by accident. Like there was a local club that's now like a music exchange. They do like CDs and tapes and stuff. Um, and literally just going there because I had nothing else to do.
Okay.
I didn't have like a great group of dudes I wanted to hang out and do fun stuff with. So we would literally just go there and bands would play. So I saw like street punk bands, and then I'd see like I remember seeing I Hate God at like 15 and having no clue what was going on. Just I Hate God, sure, I'll see that. That sounds great. No clue that's what was coming. Um,
Yeah.
and they're going to be in hardcore. And I saw this local hardcore band, and they were super welcoming. They're like, "What's up, dude?" Like there was nobody there, so I get why it happened. But like, "What's up, man? What's your name? How are you? Like, what do you do? Where do you go to school? What's your thing?" I started hanging out with those guys. And eventually kind of started figuring things out. They were a straight edge band, like cool, that sounds good. And literally just looking at what shirts they were wearing. And
Oh
that was such a big thing. I know that's terrible, but that's kind of what it was. And then going to that record store, it was three doors down, and saying, "All right, what Brothers Keeper record do you have?" Which did not turn straight edge for me, but they loved that band.
yeah.
Earth Crisis, like naturally, was the one where it's like, okay, Earth Crisis has got to be there, and it was like Victory style, like buying those and just listening to every band you could on those comps.
Hmm.
Um, One King Down was probably the one that had the biggest impact
Ooh.
on me. Like I feel like you're silly if you don't mention Earth Crisis as a kid growing up in the era, but One King Down was the one, man. Bloodlust Revenge is still a record that gets play. It's hanging on my wall. Like More Hate Than Fear is the hardest straight edge song I think I've ever heard. Still, there is not. The intro is way too long, but I don't care. I'm so invested. Like
Yeah.
everyone is tired of moshing before the first line comes up. It's so good. It hits so hard, and I think Rob was just an amazing vocalist. Like balancing the raw emotion, and in that case, absolute anger, which as like a 16, 17, 18 year old was just exactly it meshed with me perfectly.
Yeah.
So if
Nice.
that's the one, that's absolutely the ballad for me.
Was it initially the music of it that drew you as far as maybe the style or the heaviness, and then kind of looking into like the lyrics, looking into the message, that where it was, or was it something where the message and the lyrics was initially your draw to it?
I would love to say I sat down and read those lyrics extensively before I really invested myself in it, but I don't think that's realistic. We talked about like the logos of bands drawing kids in. Dude, you got to have riffs. Like for most kids, you got to have riffs. You got to have like mosh parts or whatever to get people excited. And if you keep them around long enough, hopefully then they'll read something. And I think that was the big thing. Um, the Firestorm hits, like it's one of the heaviest parts ever, and then you can read it and be like, okay, I see what was trying to get along, or what point was trying to get made. That's a big thing. Like Louisville, especially some of my friends' bands, as I was around for a while, was really big on trying to intelligently explain kind of things that you were saying, sometimes for lack of riffs. So you kind of had to find that balance, but I think you've got to pull somebody in with something. So music's got to come first. I know a lot of bands have really great things to say that don't track. And unfortunately, you don't hear much from it. It's like all the bands love them, all the dudes love them, but if you can't get a broader audience there, it's just you're only accomplishing half of what you're looking for.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I see that too. I guess as I'm asking that, I'm like, well, of course. I mean, initially, especially when you're just getting to know a band, you're not going to automatically know the lyrics of the shit. There's an
Right.
initial draw to it, but I guess maybe I meant like more so like the vocalist or like the style of like the music as opposed to directly like the lyrics or anything. But
Sure.
yeah, no, I totally agree. And even till today, especially I think today, with streaming and with so many routes of being able to get so many different styles in literally seconds. It's like you have to have something initially that's audibly like, shit, what is this? I need a little bit more, to kind of go back and then finally, look into a little bit and, see maybe the cover art or see something, with the lifestyle as far as with straight edge too. I can say, certainly like Minor Threat and things like that. But you remember the band Casey Jones?
Absolutely. I knew some of those guys vaguely forever ago.
Dude, oh my God, is it The Few, the Proud, and the Crucial? The first
Yeah, that's
album
it
that
for
they
sure.
put
Yeah,
out?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, man. When that came out, I absolutely loved that shit. I was like, absolutely. And not to say like, cause I never was, so to speak, straight edge, not like
Yeah.
alcoholic or druggy or anything like that.
Sure.
But the passion and the power that always came, especially in straight edge, even still today, is something that always draws me. The energy with it, and Casey Jones, man, I still go back and listen to that shit all the time, still today, because
It's hilarious. Like it's that weird balance of like, is he serious about this
yeah, right,
like I don't know if I want to hang out with a dude if he's this heavy into it, but for a straight edge kid, you're like, yeah, absolutely, I'm behind this for sure.
yeah,
Like, let's absolutely talk about rather what was like the line, I'd rather suck a dick or something like that, like than smoke. I was like, dude, like
that
go
went
off.
really
Like
far.
yeah, I was like, wow, I don't even really know how to like wrap my head around what you're saying right now. And stuff doesn't track at all today. But
Fuck,
it
that's so
was
funny.
fun for what it was. And I think Florida really personified it, like, don't take things too seriously. A lot
Totally.
of those kids were wild for years, and in the best way in some circumstances, and in cringy ways other times. It was a lot of fun. Like the kids we knew from there were always good dudes.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I love that you brought up that line too, because I forgot about that up until now. But yeah, Jesus Christ,
It was
that did
wild.
go
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous. Where was the transition as far as your interest in music to playing an instrument? Did your parents play at all? Did you have
No.
siblings or friends or anything like that? How did that come up?
Oh my gosh, I begged my parents for a guitar for years. They had no part of it. I was pretty engrossed in soccer. I spent a lot of my time doing that growing up, and still to this day coach and do that sort of stuff.
Nice.
Um, I just don't think they thought I would actually dive into it. So I bought my first guitar when I was in college. Like
Oh
the
wow.
the semester, like end of my first semester before I started my second semester as a freshman, I started playing guitar. Like I just like I got $300. I'm gonna go buy a guitar. There was a dude that was in a local band that worked at a music shop, set me up with a D Armand Les Paul knockoff that I wish I still had. So it was probably a lot nicer than I realized. I remember him like handing it to me to try out. I was like, dude, I literally have no idea. I don't know how to play a chord. Like I can play notes. I can tremolo pick as an idea because I know bands do that right now. And that's literally what I started with. And that was my let's try out the guitar.
Okay.
So I bought that, and my parents were like, to this day, my parents are like remorseful for not diving in sooner. My dad told me for years, he was like, man, I really wish we had come through for that. So they're actually helping my daughters in piano lessons now. A friend of ours is offering them for her. And like she's doing that. She's got her hands on any instrument she wants in this house. Just like if you want to pick it up and play for a while, go for it. Now that she's in lessons, I'm super stoked. But just I always want her to have those abilities to pick it up and do it. And if she chooses to, that's great. She'll have to like learn instruments in the school she goes to starting in like middle school and make them play stuff just to get a bunch of different feels for things in the arts, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, that rules.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
Yeah. I mean, and that is funny too, especially I think now, you being a parent as well, like you look at somebody, like your kid's asking for a drum set, for instance, and it's like, that thing is $1,300. Like that's not just, $100 or something like that. This shit's expensive. So it's kind of hard when you have a younger kid who's like, yeah, I want to play guitar. Or I want to play drums. It's like, well, dude, this is an investment. We got to sit down and actually think about this shit. Because if I pay all that money, your ass is going to be out the door with the kit.
For sure. You go hit the drums, man. Go hit the drums. Like we're not just playing around with that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully, I've been able to be like, okay, I would definitely like to have a bass. So if she wants to play bass, I'll have a bass. It's no problem. If she wants to play, like I've got a ukulele just because she can pick that up and play. So I can play like 2 songs on a ukulele, and there we go. So if she wants to do that, she can do that. She's got a piano. She had a piano before she started lessons. Like if you want to make noise on the piano, make noise on the piano. It's fine. If she ever wants to play guitar, like cool. Which since she was like a little kid, I love like delay and reverb pedals and stuff. She will come in and just mess with my pedals while I'm playing guitar just to see what it does. Like from like 3-4 years old, she's like, can I just like come hit the pedals? I'm like, sure, dude. Like turn everything on, like go nuts. And I love that. Just that kind of that inquiry, like exploring bass learning, I think is really, really cool.
Has anything come out of that as far as just messing around and being like, that actually sounds sick. I'm going to use that on something.
Not a thing. She's got such a short attention span with it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then she cuts the delay off. I'm like, and it's not coming back. So that's kind of the end of that. And I mean, there's knobs. So she's going everything.
Turning everything.
I'm like, all right, well, check it out. Like, if you do this, this is what happens. She's like, no, I get it. It's cool. Go for it. Like,
right. That's funny.
That's cool, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're initially picking up guitar, what were some of the first things that you were trying to learn, and maybe something that you took a little bit to sit down and actually learn all the way through? What were some of those firsts?
Yeah. So I was awful about that. I think part of like the empowerment of hardcore in that, I'm 18 with my first guitar. I've been involved in shows, known bands. I've already played a show as a singer. Awful, but like I very much know you don't have to be a great musician and don't have to be able to know, you don't have to know anything about music theory to like be in a popular band. So right out of the gate, I'm like, I'm just going to write music. I'm just going to learn how to write music. So I learned the power chord, graces everyone's presence to this very day, and learned, like I learned Misfit songs, as I like those, and Minor Threat and kind of all those guys. You could find tabs on those at that point in the ear, and the days of like the tab where it follows along and is correct and all that, not even close. It was text files. So I think I learned more from realizing like they were wrong than anything else. The only song I remember like spending time on over and over again early was Raining Blood. Like 100%. I've been playing guitar for like a month, and that was all I cared about. There was like the metalhead at the school I went to, because I went to a university with no punk kids, no hardcore kids, no metal kids, a lot of polo shirts, not a lot of like anything related to punk, hardcore, or otherwise. There were like a handful of dudes. So I met the metalhead, and he was like, this is Slayer. Here's the book. Thank you, sir. Well done. And I sat there and I was like, okay, I can't do any of this, but I'm going to learn the triplets. So like to this day, triplets, no problem. So I learned that one and I could get through it. It was funny when I first met Isaac, who plays an Inclination with me. His dad's like an old metalhead, like super sweet dude. And it was like our second practice as one of our previous bands. And he and I are just kind of jamming. His dad comes in, is like, yo, what's up? And Isaac and I are like, let's just do Raining Blood. And I think we made it through up until like the solo. I hadn't tried to play that song in 10 years, but just memory of how many times I had tried to figure that out, and like the spider part in there, and who knows how accurate I was, but who knows how accurate they are when they're playing it. I'm sure they're great, but like
Yeah,
just
right.
getting through all that stuff was sick. Like I loved that. But other than that, man, I was writing really, really terrible music almost from the onset. I had an acoustic guitar. I bought an acoustic guitar like 2 weeks after I bought an electric because I realized I need to be able to play something not in my dorm room. So I bought an acoustic and
Mhm.
literally sit outside of my dorm. It was the classic like douchey dorm thing where like every kid was going to bang out a John Mayer song or a Dave Matthews song or something. So every kid was like, "Hey man, can I hit your guitar for a second?" I was like, "Yeah, but you got to teach me one thing." So they'd show me like a really,
Oh, okay.
simple chord progression or something. And I learned so many just kind of cool little things like that that could just keep me outside in front of this dorm playing guitar for hours, being a kid that could barely strum. And I mean, I was playing 3, 4, 5 hours a day that first year, staying up way too late, doing all that sort of stuff. And it just kind of threw me into it. So I couldn't bang out any of the kind of classic songs everybody figured out with any accuracy. But as soon as I figured it out, I said, cool, and tried to write something of my own.
Sick. I love that. What now? You mentioned it too, as far as with a band that you sang with. I wanted to dig into a couple of things for firsts with first bands.
Sure, yeah, yeah,
Playing for
yeah.
the first time. Tell us about your first band and how did it
Oh
come
man.
about you singing?
Yeah, so well, I couldn't play anything. I was 16 or 17. I had no ability to music
Necessity.
anything, but I
Okay.
I screamed along at bands, so I can probably do that. First band never played a show, never did anything. We literally had 3 songs, 2 singers, like 3 guitarists. It was literally just everybody we knew that we were friends with. Like we'll all just be in the band. Like there was like one of my friend's girlfriends was in the band. She literally just hung out, like didn't even like aspire to do anything. She was just like, yeah, I'm here, and we were like, that's amazing. So there were like 9 of us in my parents' basement for our 3 practices, trying to play. I think we played like Epicure, Firestorm, and then kind of wrote our own song. Play like 4 practices, and we were just done. Like I think the singer, because there were 2 of us, we had a female singer and myself, and she broke up with the drummer, and the band was done. That was it. We're like, we
Oof.
can't be in the same room. The drummer was older, and he was like, I have no interest in this. So that was just the end of it. So from the ashes of that came another band, and we played, I think, 2 shows. Um, Found out like at the first show that the guitarist had ripped off parts from another local band that I wasn't good enough to realize. He just like changed the key and wrote the same things. But the dude that wrote
Oof.
that stuff was a buddy of mine. He's like, hey man, just so you like that's a crestfallen song. I was like, I literally had no idea. She's like, I know you don't, but just understand what you're doing. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I went to college, and it was kind of the end of it. It was not a big deal. Um,
Mm.
but the first band like I ever did anything with, my freshman year of college, like literally 4 months after buying that guitar, some friends of mine in Cincinnati were in a band called Subjugate Faster. Their bassist had quit or something. They're like, have you ever played bass? Like, never played bass, but it's less strings. I can probably figure it out. So I started playing with them. And within like a month or so of being with them, like we were traveling to play shows. Um, like we played in St. Louis, we played Iowa Fest, which is really a big deal at the time. Not at all. But like Dead to Fall, I think, headlined it, and One Nation Under, which was like a Cincinnati band as well. They played, so we started playing there. And that was when I first really like figured out how to be in a band a little bit, and figured out like what it was actually like to eat shit on the road. Like can you manage to like find $2 to get a power bar at the gas station, or are you having to try to find some way to get it out of there without being seen? Like it was just like I remember the first thing we went on. Like I deposited like a $70 check I had, and that was going to be my money for food. And of course, I didn't realize it took 2 days to clear. So I was on tour, like overdrafting my account because I had no
Oh
idea.
no.
Yeah, I had no idea that it took time to do it. We had no phones to check. Um, I only had a debit card. I certainly didn't have a credit card at 18. So I got back and was like $300 in the hole, having spent $40 on overage charges. It was like, all right, I'm learning a whole lot about the world right now. And so I can sleep on, so I don't even get to sleep on a floor because we routed ourselves so terribly. It's like St. Louis to Iowa, and then from Iowa to Cincinnati the next day. Just brutal. Not that we had any money to stay in a hotel. It was awesome. Like you can only do that at 18, 19, 20 years old and be like, this is incredible. First, you can only do it for so long before you're like, wow, this is a lot. But I mean, I love those moments. Like I cherish them.
Yeah.
Like I think they're so important for young bands to get that experience. Um, it's never going to be the same where you're like, I kind of met this dude once, and he said he'd set up a show. Like, I'm gonna call him and leave a message, and maybe he'll call us back. Like it was
Right.
such a thing that I don't know if you can even really recreate it. Like the messaging and all that isn't a thing. Like trading flyers, like you were literally like, okay, I've got to meet this band that's traveling through, because if I don't meet them, I will never be able to play Syracuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like traveling to shows and trying to meet people while you're there, like being super like intentional about introducing yourself to randoms that were clearly
Mhm.
locals was such a thing, because otherwise you're never going to get back there, because you're
Yeah.
not going to find them on the internet, you're not going to hit them up. It just wasn't a thing in the early 2000s. So
Yeah.
super cool. I'm sorry I gave you like the $10 answer to that question, but
No, 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 that's great. No,
that's the full run.
and I think mentioning too, as far as like some of those earlier times where, it being in a sense like you're on the job training, it's like when you're new like that, shit is meant to go wrong and things are meant to, kind of struggle a little bit, because if it's not that way initially, you don't really know what it is, what you're, if it's a passion and you're not going through the shit at first, it's like, well, further down the road, you're like, well, I'm not supposed to go through this. What's going on? This is that's your learning curves, and that is a good point too, as far, especially for younger musicians, and you have your local bands where they start off and it's their first band ever, and they have a Pearl professional series drum set and keyboards that are, it's like, what the hell, like what is it? And maybe they go somewhere, but it's like
Sure.
sometimes you kind of see where all of a sudden those are the same bands that like a week later they're not doing anything, because they,
Absolutely.
they're kind of getting too much too quick, maybe, if that makes sense, and not sounding like a dickhead with it, but that's a little bit
It's
of the
reality.
rules of the road in the sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about as far as your first time recording, in this, in maybe it being a in-home type situation first, and then your first time recording in like a legit studio, kind of the balance in between those two things.
Yeah, for sure. So the first recording I ever did was actually the fall. So I hadn't even been playing guitar for a year. We had like just a really traditional style, kind of hardcore punky type band, that a dude, like an older dude who at the time seemed like he was a million, who's probably younger than I am now, came over with his like tower computer and set it up in this kid's basement, and recorded us there. All plugged, mic'd our cabinets in this basement. We'd play one at a time. There was no click track. There was nothing. So we were like trying to play. It was super raw. And we had no idea. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Literally couldn't play one of the four songs, nor could the other guitarist. The drummer had to play the songs for us because he had written it. We couldn't physically play it. So he had to record the guitar parts for all those, which is a great feeling. But we didn't even care. We're like, it's okay. We'll practice and figure it out. But I need to have something to practice to. Because again, it was the era of like, you practiced and figured it out and then had to come back later and like see if you could remember the songs from practice.
Yeah, right. Right.
Like it was just so cool. Like we get back like, all right, who remembers what we wrote a week ago? And like, I don't know. It must not have been that good. I guess we should do something else. Um, and then like a year or two after that, I kind of started a new band like between school years, like back in the summer, found some friends, and we recorded with a guy named Chris Owens, who was super cool, to us, which in hindsight was probably rare for what we were making him record, knowing where he was musically. We just knew he was really good, as a musician, was in really cool bands, so we should just be really mellow with him. But he was great. Like I think he loved the fact that while he probably didn't mess with our music too much, I think he loved the fact that we were really tight. We didn't have to punch in. We didn't have a lot of particulars about, I want this to sound that way. We're like, dude, you know so much more about this. Like, just make it sound how you think it should sound. And the fact that we just got it done, I think that made it work really smoothly. But it was full like analog. He literally recorded us on like VHS tapes. There was something about that because of the
Whoa.
tracks. Yeah. And it sounded great. And like Chris, he actually builds studios today, out in Los Angeles. Like he was in a band called Lords and did a bunch of like Maximum Louisville stuff. Dude's just an unbelievable guitarist, and moved out there to build studios for people. And I know there's like names people would know that he's built for, but just builds these like 6 and 7 figure studio projects. And is just apparently an absolute god at it. So I feel kind of lucky
Damn.
to have been able
Wow.
to record with him. Again, I didn't get to like pick his brain and do all that stuff, but I at least learned the really important thing of like, don't go into the studio soft. Like
Yeah.
go in knowing what you're doing, don't be figuring like I think I can play this part is polar opposite from the first time when I couldn't play the riffs at all. To come back to
Hmm.
be like, no, man, like know your stuff, be able to play every part, know exactly what you want to do. You're going to overdub this, know exactly where, exactly how. Um, and we were a little bit money constrained with that too. And of course, the only weekend we could get was during like Crazy Fest, which was the big festival at that time. So it was like, no, I'm going to be there for 6 hours and get everything done and get back to the fest. So it was cool. It was a probably a better experience than I had in a lot of my other opportunities doing it.
Okay, nice. And that's the one thing I hear from the other end too, as far as from engineers or someone who produces too, is saying constantly, is like just come in knowing your shit. Like all the other stuff we can figure out tones and whatnot, but just know your music,
Yeah.
and that's been a huge. Not necessarily. I can't remember. I mean, I guess a couple of times going in to record something, there might have been like one part that we might trip over or something and wanted to
Sure.
make sure that was perfect for the recording. But, like it's just kind of thinking about that too, it's like, man, especially with money constraints, and time, if that's the thing, it's like, I don't want to be sitting here writing a fucking song in the studio. Like we're not Metallica.
I was never, yeah, that was never a benefit I had. We were always by the
Not an
hour,
option.
man. Like, we're going to run out at hour 7, y'all. We got to get going.
Yeah, nice. So going from there, I wanted to dig into talking a little bit about Inclination, and with already knowing and playing with some of the cats in previous bands. Correct, or am I wrong with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I had played with two of the guys before. Isaac and I did a band called Nine Eyes before Inclination, and we're actually still doing
Hmm.
it when Inclination formed. He and I had played together for a couple years doing that. And then Tyler played in a hardcore band called Another Mistake that I played with for not very long, but they wanted to play a show. Their guitarist was going to be out of town. My other band at the time was playing the show, so they're like, dude, could you learn our riffs and do it? So yeah, for sure. And filled in, and then just stuck with them for a while. There was a fest they were going to play, and they're like, "You can get in free if you play with us. We'll sound better as a 5 piece." So I did that, and I had
Oh,
known
sweet.
Tyler for a while, and so yeah, so we had played together. I didn't really know the other two guys too well when we joined up. Kind of knew their bands.
Hmm.
That was about
So
it.
how did Inclination come about then?
um, I think if I don't know that Isaac would say it, but I think if we're being honest, I just asked. He and Tyler had been talking, and Caleb had been talking for a while about like they wanted to do a straight edge band. And I was just kind of listening in those conversations periodically at shows and whatnot. And they're like, so, gosh, we just got to find another like straight edge guitarist. Who could we find? Who could play guitar? And they were talking to another guy here or there. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool, man. But like, I'm straight edge. Like, I play guitar. I would like to be in a band. And I think some of it is they wanted to travel and they wanted it to kind of be as good as it could be. And they were just nervous about my schedule because I'm pretty busy. And I'm a teacher, so like my school year, I can't take off super easily if something really cool comes up. And so I think there were some nerves there. I was like, let's not make it a problem until it is a problem. Let's see what happens. And to date, we haven't had to turn a lot down because of that. We're working around so many schedules between Knocked Loose and Caleb is in school as well. Finishing up an engineering degree this year. So like we're all kind of busy with stuff. So we make it happen when we can and try to rock as much as possible. But we know that's going to be maybe 15 shows a year if we're lucky. So
Right.
yeah, we just came together. Isaac was like, "Hey guys, here's a record. You like it?" I'm like, yeah, it's unbelievable. I would definitely like to play that. So he sent it to me, and I started learning it. And within like 2 months, we played our first show. Um, yeah, so that was kind of the
Damn.
beginnings of it.
Nice. Okay. So what from your memory, what was like the first thing that you remember hearing as far as maybe initial riffs or tracks that was kind of, that served as foundation for the band?
For sure. So yeah, it didn't happen like that at all. I literally got sent the record. Um,
Oh.
Isaac as a dude. So Isaac records like anything you've heard come out of Louisville that's in the hardcore scene, probably recorded by Isaac over the last like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. I
He is
noticed that he
just
did those.
he did everything, and all the bands you haven't heard of, he did those too. He did all the Nine Eye stuff. He did all like anything I've done, he's done. I haven't been in like a studio in years because he just does it. And he's really good. Some sound a little better than others because he's always like trying things, which I think is awesome and just like figuring it out. So yeah, like he literally just sent the record. When Nine Eye started, I just got sent a record like, hey, do you want to do this? Again, very different from like what we talked about before. It was so organic at first. And like as we were a band, we would start writing together. When we wrote the most recent Inclination record and the EP, I would go over to his house and we would write. But it wouldn't just be like guitar and drums, because he of course plays drums really, really well as well. It would be, we sit at his computer with guitars and he'd be like, all right, here's a riff I have. I'm like, cool, what if we do this out of it? He's like, yeah, let me try that. And would play in his head. And he's literally just staring into space, like riffing. He's like, yeah, I like it. Like, okay, give me a second. Starts banging out, like programming drums in real time. You know, does that for 5 minutes. I'm sitting in silence, just listening to ding, 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 dunk, 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 listening to him go off. And he's like, he'll go, all right, cool. And like put his guitar back in his lap and it starts playing. Here come the drums. And he records the riff over it. He's like, all right, that's cool. We got that part. What's next? And it's just this real time, like snapshot recording of what we have just done. So when I leave, you know, a couple hours later, the song is done. You know, like, yeah, we'll make little changes here and there. He'll, you know, make the drum parts cool. But it's just done. It's incredible. Anyone that's ever worked with Isaac in any capacity basically remarks the same thing. The dude's brain is just on a different level when it comes to music, and his talent to do that sort of stuff is just so different from my own. He is an absolute machine. He's a riff god. Everything he puts out, like with the first record, with every Inclination record, he's super like, dude, we should write this together. Let's do this together. And I get a message from him 2 days later. He's like, yeah, I couldn't sleep last night, so I wrote some songs, and sends them to you. And like, are you not going to use them? No, they're incredible. Like, they're the greatest stuff we've ever done. Like, no, man, I really want to like come in and make these worse with the stupid riffs I have. Like, no. So, you know, as far as riffs go, like if I'm being really kind to myself, it's 70-30 Isaac Neve. It's probably more like 80-20 or 90-10. He's just so good. So those first things had nothing from me on it. Like, I think I got to do some vocals on them, which I can't even do anymore because I literally can't yell for more than like 2 lines, and then I can't talk for days. I don't know what happened. I got older and I just can't do it anymore. So like I got riffs on things from this point on, but it is very much been the like Isaac's super open and super happy about it, but just like, yeah, I'm sorry, I accidentally wrote an entire EP. Like, is that cool? Like, yeah, dude, it's amazing. What are we gonna do? Say these aren't great? So that's kind of been how it is. It's a great position to be in because he doesn't have like a massive ego about it, but it's just so good. He certainly could, and I wouldn't say anything.
Yeah, no, you know, and I think when you earlier mentioned too the time of going to a practice and then 2 weeks later showing up and not being able to have the opportunity to record and shit, like that really kind of sparked a thing, you know, and then now, you know, kind of mentioning in real time being like, well, what if we kind of do this? And then you get to write the thing and it's like, it makes it, you know, in a sense, a little bit easier from like, okay, I don't have to sit here and concentrate on remembering it and wasting 9 hours of the day to just practice this one song over and over. Like, we can have it slapped out and it's done, you know. If anything, we can polish a little bit and have it out to release shit.
When the other guitarist writes that part and you're like, dude, I just can't play that right now. They're like, well, I guess flub through it so we can keep practicing and go on and like try to figure it out at home.
Right.
It's different. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What can you tell us about the Midwest Straight Edge, the cover art? So that bad boy on initial sight, you know, it's like it shows so many different things. What can you tell us about that?
So it's Bonnie and Clyde. Like after they died, like the police shot them in the big shootout, right? I'm remembering this not from history class, but solely from watching those whatever the movie was. It was great, and I can't remember anything about it other than it was Bonnie and Clyde, and it was great. I guess, gosh, I can't remember who. Tyler told me, and Nick from Forced Order, maybe, and I don't know Nick from Forced Order, but I believe that's who Tyler told me it was. He basically hit him up, was like, yo, would you do some cover art? And he sent it to him, and Tyler said, yeah, showed it to us. We're like, yeah, that's sick. Let's go with it. And that's the entire story. It was like, this is cool. I don't know if there's a tie-in to Bonnie and Clyde in any way, shape, or form. I don't know if there being a tie-in. Maybe if, again, I'm assuming I'm remembering that correctly, but it wasn't Nick from Forced Order. I'm sorry if there's no Nick in Forced Order. I'm sorry. But I think it was literally like he thought it was cool and, you know, it was kind of pixelated and kind of fuzzy. So I don't know. It's abstract and worked. And, you know, we had no idea what was going to go if it was going to get, you know, people were going to like it or anything at that point. So like, it looks sick. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
There's not a cool story behind that one. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's just as admirable because, you know, you have so many times where something might be kind of cool and it's like, yeah, you know, this is like a drawing piece. Like, tell us about it. And it's this overly long thing. It's like, boy, I did not get anything from what I'm seeing, but I appreciate the story, and sometimes you just have something that's fucking sweet and it's like, here it was and it worked and there it is.
I mean, there's some really iconic album covers that are completely whatever. Like you're like,
Totally.
that's so. I mean, Metallica literally has the Black Album. It's black with a shiny, with a shiny "Don't Tread on Me" snake on the bottom. If you look at it in the right light, that many people didn't catch for months. Like, oh,
Yeah,
it's the
right.
Black Album. This is sick. Like, okay. I don't know if we're gonna
Yeah.
do the Black Album or the Green Album or anything. I guess Weezer cut all those too. So literally all the colors are done. But
Yeah.
the like, don't overcomplicate things. Maybe. Yeah, I'm with you.
Man. I love that. I love that. And Kanye West just released a Black album too. I'm kind of wondering if he'll do a physical and have something shiny in there because you don't see anything on the cover art. But
Gotcha.
that's to be determined. We'll see.
Is that Donda?
What
Is
it
Donda the
is?
one that's black?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
We have a friend.
Oh
One of
man.
our friends was like losing his mind the night it didn't get released. The first time it was supposed to be released, and so we just gave him a hard time about it for like weeks. Sorry,
Yeah.
Nick. Sorry, Donda didn't come out immediately, and now he doesn't like it. So this is like
Oh,
two
what a
hours
bummer.
long and
Well,
30 tracks. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
see
it is
myself
pretty
listening to
long.
that one anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay. All right. With I wanted to touch on a couple of tracks from Inclination, just as far as whatever memories come to mind. Now you mentioned, with maybe not even necessarily with the first one I was going to ask, an ex of my own. You had mentioned Isaac, writing and such, but just as far as maybe the first time that you had heard it, and maybe the first time you remember playing it live. What can you tell us about that track?
Yeah, so I think that's probably a better way to look at it is honestly like the what experience that I have in it because Tyler, we don't like Tyler wrote all the lyrics to it, Isaac wrote all the music, and then it kind of was presented like here it is. Tyler's great when you talk to him about what these things mean. He is so passionate about what he's written, to a fault at times probably. Like he's so committed to it. And I mean that in the best way. Like he has that emotional connection. So the first time we played it live, there was the LDB Fest. We played here in Louisville, a lot of hometown friends and stuff. And we played like the pre-show, and then we were the surprise ad, which I don't think was intended, to the actual fest. And I can just remember the weekend, like being in a band, it was brand new, having kids singing along to those songs immediately, being super excited about it immediately, and seeing like kids being excited about Straight Edge, because I feel like it had been a while since I had really, really felt that. I think we've done a good job, or at least try to, of not being way over the top and like militant and angry about it. I don't think that's really in Tyler, but while simultaneously trying to celebrate, what feelings we get from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a delicate balance, I think, and I've certainly been a part of bands that have kind of been on either side. Um, I I'm all about more hate than fear and being angry about some things that come from it, but I'm also realistic that, as you grow up, you're going to shift a little bit with that. Um, I love 18-year-olds that are just way over the top about it. I remember being at a Catholic university where kids were just plowed every Thursday night through Sunday night, just doing their thing, and me being like, okay, this is not what I'm into at all. So like looking out and seeing people super excited about it again, excited about music, and even kids that weren't necessarily straight edge, just being excited about the songs, that was huge. And it was like, okay, you know what? I will sleep in an airport, catch a 5 a.m. flight, land, and be teaching a class 25 minutes after I land, because it's worth it to me, which I've done. Like it's worth it.
Damn.
Like let's go. Like this has that energy. It's worthwhile to me.
Nice. I love that. And I think that's the driving force to a lot of times with having certain things like that. With mention with the schedule too. Or for instance, like Incendiary. That was one of the bands where like myself and my band, a couple of the other members, all of us have full-time jobs and have different things where it's not necessarily something where you necessarily want to be like a weekender band or you want to be a band that only gets to do such and such. But when something like that figures out and it's like, well, I still want to play music. I still want to fucking be a part of this. I've loved hardcore since I was barely a teenager, early a
Right.
teenager. It's like that's you make that shit happen. So you mentioned coming in and teaching a class 10 minutes,
Yeah.
20 minutes after a flight. That's
Dude, it was
insane.
brutal. Like the
That's
kids literally
great.
watched me walk in not wearing like not wearing a shirt and tie. Like I mean, it was insane. It was absolutely insane. Like I had put like normal work clothes in the back of my room, rolled in like looking rough. I'm sure because I slept 5 hours in Tampa airport after a fest. Like
Yeah.
this was not tip top moment whatsoever. And it was like I could get an Airbnb, I'd sleep 2 hours. Like forget it, let's just let it be. But we got through that day. Probably not my premier day of teaching, but that's okay. We survived.
Nice.
And I love it.
Nice.
I will never see Incendiary. Incendiary is one of my favorite bands. It is a running joke now with band members that I will just never get to see them. At Sound and Fury, we played with them a couple years ago, and I missed them. I was sitting at merch, which was like downstairs on another level, and you couldn't hear the bands at all. And Caleb came downstairs, was like, "Yo, can you watch merch? I really want to see Incendiary." He's like, "They literally just played." Oh, great! I just miscounted. They had to drop the Chicago show a couple days ago
Yeah,
because of
I
the flooding in
saw.
New York, which is totally understandable, and I'm hoping they're all safe and everybody else is safe up there.
Sure.
But dude, like and I forget what the other time was I missed him at something. I'm like, oh, it's just literally never going to happen. So um, if Inclination and Incendiary are booked on the same show, I'm really sorry for either getting hurt on the way there or them not being able to make it. I think there's something against it. I don't know.
Some sort of
Hopefully it'll
hex.
happen one day, but amazing band. I just love them to death. So
Yeah,
I literally
nice.
quote them in my classes. Like every year, I inevitably quote their lyrics in my class. They've got one that really applies every year I do it. I don't know.
Damn, I
Yeah,
love that.
great band.
Yeah, that's cool too. I was listening to an interview and you mentioned being a teacher and mentioning kind of how certain things within hardcore apply and I've always thought that was kind of cool because I remember I had a teacher who was kind of like a metalhead. When I was coming up in school and wouldn't necessarily talk about it or anything like that, but you'd walk in with like I had like at one point a Weezer shirt that was a mock on an old Slayer shirt and it had like
Sure.
a
Yeah.
pentagram. I had like rulers and different shit and he's like, that guy, is that a mock on Slayer? And started like talking about it. I'm like, yeah, I love Slayer too. And he's like, all right, we'll talk later. And
Yeah,
never
for
did,
sure.
but it was kind of cool because you kind of know some of those guys who are like into that shit too. So I appreciate hearing that. And then some of the a really good friend of mine who's also he's a middle school teacher that has been involved in hardcore for so long too. So it's always fun to hear some of those things. And you mentioned having some Incendiary lyrics. I mean, that's sick. I love that.
Absolutely.
Having that apply to classes.
Absolutely.
What
If you don't know what the
what
product is, the product is you. Let's go. Right?
nice, nice, nice. I love that. Nice. All right. So next, I wanted to touch on Vagrant. This was kind of hard because like when fear turns into confidence is probably. I mean, it's become an instant classic. But Vagrant, I think, is probably my favorite on the EP there, and I wanted to dig into some of the memories on that track. I absolutely love that one.
Sure. So I remember getting it from Isaac and being like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, this is great. The ending is phenomenal. Musically, it's just, there's a lot of fun parts to play. The like weird octave run at the front that's on 5 and like the times, it's not like off time, but it's just a little weird and like had to
Mm.
practice that a bunch. It was a really cool one to play. The opening, like it just hits right away and the energy comes right away. So like playing it, learning it was awesome. Talking to Tyler about the song, like it was a very personal one for him lyrically, and like very, very pointed at a couple certain situations. But just I think the general idea of like knowing that there are people that will come in and out of your life and in and out of situations that are challenging, that can bring real negativity, and whether that be in the form of substances and substance abuse or just in the form of being kind of a caustic person, that's something that's going to happen. And being willing to kind of separate yourself from those people, I think is really important. And at the risk of like losing other friendships and feeling ostracized from friendships because you're seeing friends engage with some of those people and being like, dude, I can't get pulled into this with you. I don't want any part of them. So I wish you the best. And when you're out of it, we'll be there. And there's actually kind of a response song to that on the album coming up, kind of looking at one of the other people in that dynamic. And Tyler's talked a lot about that one. And again, it's not a situation that I know a ton about. And we've talked to everybody involved in that a couple times over the years. And I think everything is cool. I hope everything is cool. But I think the bigger picture about, knowing that there's some things in life you really need to separate yourself from. It's while we're certainly looking at it like straight from the perspective of being straight edge dudes, I think you can broaden that really easily.
Yeah,
And
totally.
not say it's not just about that, but there's more. And Tyler's had a lot of experiences with drug users and whatnot, and kind of the negativity that can come from that. And we're talking serious stuff, not the recreational pot user, the dealers, the coke dealers, the heroin stuff. I mean, heroin in Louisville and the music scene, especially in the mid 2000s, was horrible. Like I know multiple dudes that passed from that. So we all have kind of our own tie-in to kind of trying to stay away from those situations and noting that things can be big and things can be bad there, and trying to find some element of peace and separation is really important.
Yeah, wow. I think that's something too, as far as, with mentioning, even outside of, like, initially that might be, the draw or the inspiration from, like, a personal story, as far as, like, a straight edge, like, message. But even, people, and some of the things that people are going through right now, different people hear different things, like, that can be kind of an enlightening point where it's like, man, I'm not comfortable with being in this situation or being around these people, whether it be some sort of abuse possibly, or, anything like that, and driving yourself away. So, I mean, I definitely appreciate, those different things, and, the message also applying outside of, maybe even just somebody, how they're taking it.
Sure.
But that's a beautiful thing with art and music in general, is that you can have one way that you're looking at it, and somebody's like, man, I listened to this song and this is what I took out of it. And, da da da. It's like, well, fuck, that's not what I wrote, but I'm glad
So I'm
that
glad.
it
Yeah,
inspired a positive push, for sure. For
absolutely.
sure. I love that. Now you mentioned Inclination recently recording, and I don't want to dig into anything, as far as you releasing things you're not supposed to, or, saying things, but what can you tell us about, some of this new stuff? I'm so stoked.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll share what I can think to share. There's not, it's kind of such an uncertain time with timelines and stuff like that. Records, pressing and all that is so delayed. Um, but we're hoping to have it out, probably spring next year, just realistically, as far as physicals go. We'll start kind of leaking stuff as the year goes on, but it's fully recorded right now. We recorded with Andy at Bricktop up in Chicago.
Sweet.
And Isaac went up there and was just the absolute madman. I'm a firm believer in one guitarist doing everything sounds better, just from all the little, like, intricacies of when you're playing. It just sounds better and more accurate that way in my head. Also, Isaac is going to do it better than I am, straight up. So he went up there and took care of all that. I couldn't have gotten off school. Of course, we lined up with, like, the first week of school. So he went up there and did that. We love the way Andy, I think he loves working with him. He loves the way it sounds. Our new drummer, Chris Mills, who's drummed in Harm's Way for years, was doing the drum work up there. Yeah, not a bad pickup. He's decent.
Holy shit. He's playing for you guys now?
He played his first show with us in Chicago or the last Thursday.
Damn,
absolute machine.
No way.
Absolute machine.
Wow,
So
that's fucking sick.
Live drums, guitar tones sound ridiculous. We've heard the not even like mixes, just basically the raws put together, just slap them together, and they already sound amazing. So couldn't be more excited for that. We've got a couple friends coming in to do guest spots just to really solidify some really good bonds we have with some other local or some other like straight edge bands in the area now, just dudes that we know. We've got like the guy we look up to there's a guy that's going to sing on it. I don't know if so let's talk about that. It doesn't matter. But like a veteran hero is doing a part on it. So like we're just really jazzed on some of that. Yeah, absolutely. Like if I could have grabbed that 16-year-old B and been like, yo, this band's really like, guess what's gonna happen in like 20 years. I'd have been really stoked then. Yeah, just like I feel so fortunate that we're getting to put something out that's gonna be like really, really have our hands on it. As far as the music, like I can't be any less cliche and say like it's more melodic and it's heavier. We've all read that a million times. I think we were really intentional about trying to push the actual riffs a little bit, which comes from Isaac sitting in his house, not being able to play out for a year. I mean, like, okay, I'll just get better and better and better. So I get to figure out how to play his riffs. That's going to be really exciting live. Some of them are certainly complex. There's a lot of faster parts, kind of some thrashier stuff, like the AHC comp that we have a song on that I think physicals come out in the next month or something. But our song of that like has a part that's a lot faster and kind of thrashier than anything we've done. So we've got some of that coming. We've got some of the bigger chorusy type things. We actually just strum some parts now, which we haven't really done before. So there's just some variance in there. There's some interludes. There's an interlude that I wrote like 5 years ago that I've just been sitting on. It's going to make it on. It's like a really cool vibe, like just some really neat things. I think the overall record, the sequence we've got stuff in, it just flows really well. I'm really proud of how cohesive it sounds. as kind of a single piece. And lyrically, I think Tyler just I've been listening to Tyler lyrics. I've been in multiple bands with Tyler over the years. I've listened to him deliver it. His vocal delivery, there are things I heard him do on this that I hadn't heard him do before. They're not just like crazy, death metal operatic sort of stuff at all. It's hardcore. He's a hardcore vocalist, but he really pushed himself and did some things that just sound like somebody else at times and are a little different. So I'm excited to hear that. And lyrically, he was so intentional about, look, we've all been through some stuff the last 18 months, between COVID, between the acknowledgement of some of the abysmal things that continue to happen to people in our country based on systematic oppression. And we tried to speak on that and, from our point of view, and just be very clear about where we stand. And I think he's articulated himself incredibly well.
Damn, man, that's so cool. Holy shit. I mean, I appreciate there still being, enough mystery behind what's to come, but holy moly, the things that you just fucking said. But I mean, I love all of that, but especially hearing that Chris is going to be that's involved with this too. Like, that's fucking awesome. Like that's one of my cats right there. I love that.
Yeah,
dude.
for sure.
I mean,
it's he's such
already hearing a all-star lineup. I'll just say that, as far as with the band, and then having him incorporated too. That's
man. The only positive that came for me from this was that the average age of the band went up. So like, I'm still definitely the oldest dude, but like it definitely went up. But I'm definitely the worst looking dude in the band now. I'm the least talented in the band. I'm the least recognizable in the band. Like this has not been, it's definitely killing me off. Maybe I was there before and just didn't think so, but. No, Chris is incredible. We've got he is just such a perfectionist when it comes to his craft, and I mean he's just incredible. We're so excited to be working with him. His drum tracks are amazing. And they don't even sound great yet because no work had been done when we heard them. Like I know they're going to be made to sound unreal, but just without even like touching them, they're incredible. So we're excited.
Sick.
I'm hoping it'll stand up a little bit against some other just incredible records coming out over the next year or two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard too, especially with the two previous records that you guys have put out. I mean, that's one thing with other bands, but it's like, that's something too where, I'm excited for it, and I don't think it's going to let us down by any means. But having the two, releases that you guys have put out too, I mean, that's been huge just as far as seeing your guys' live sets and different things where it's like, you're not touring all the time, but you have the product that you put out there and people are fucking drawn to it. So I love that. Hell yeah.
Very fortunate in that regard. I've been in plenty of bands that have put out great records that no one cares about. So the fact that that's just the way it is, man. Like, I talk to young kids, like I talk to kids at school about it all the time. I'm like, man, there's so many elements here beyond, frankly, like talent. Working hard is number one. I worked hard in a lot of bands. This one I've found limited, some like amount of success from not working nearly as hard for personally. Now we've worked incredibly hard as a band together, but man, I just am so thankful after every show. I've tried to stop being so corny about it, but just so thankful. And, at an age where I thought I'd be probably done and not being able to do anything, to being like doing more than I ever got to do. So I'm just, I hope the product speaks for itself. I am nervous how the record will play against what I know some other amazing records coming out. I am not nervous about how it plays against the rest of our stuff. It is by and large the material we are most proud of. It absolutely hits. It absolutely bangs. It checks every box, and if no one likes it, I don't care. For me, it's something I'm so proud of, and I think I speak for everyone when I say that.
I love that. I love that. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So I wanted to move on here from, we have October coming up this next month. This is kind of a hard transition, but, I want to dig into a little bit of horror here.
Horror guy, man. Come on. This is why I started following you first, man. I love this stuff. Yeah.
Hell
like we're
yeah.
literally,
all right, sick. Yeah,
we're 5 days late, but we're putting up our Halloween decorations in my house this week. Like, this is our thing. Like, we do it in September. September 1 is my hard date. Everybody does like Christmas decorations, after Thanksgiving. We go November 1 for Christmas stuff. We go September 1 for Halloween. So because I was out of town and all that, we had to wait a few days. Horror movies, dude, have been my thing forever. Like, I got freaking destroyed by horror movies as a youngster that I shouldn't have been watching. I saw Alien when I was like 6 or something. Shouldn't have been watching it. I don't think my parents really realized what was coming. They knew it was a horror movie. I think my mom claims today that like I snuck in and saw it, but she's lying. That's not what happened. The first four, like I think Alien is absolutely a horror movie. I will die on that hill.
Yeah, totally.
It does it better than 98% of other horror movies as far as like being a thriller and creating a world. Like world building is so big for me. It's why I love sci-fi movies as well. But when horror does it, it's so much better, and it just the perfect blend. So you're sitting there. I mean, it's the Chessburster scene. Everybody knows it, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you like horror, or sci-fi, or anything. That is such an iconic scene. I am 6 years old, and that thing bursts out of that dude's chest. Lost my mind. And then you actually see the xenomorphs, and somehow I managed to see Aliens shortly thereafter in my parents' house, still as a youngster. I did not sleep for months. I would literally be standing, like we would go to Red Giraffe Video, like the old, like an old VHS store, which again, you don't see them anymore, unfortunately. I love that stuff. And be, 7, 8 years old, and I would my parents would be going looking at a game or at movies. I would go stand next to Aliens, and if anybody walked by, I would pick it off the shelf and go, "Don't watch this movie. It is so scary. You'll be just you can't do this." I don't know how many rentals I sold doing that, or how many people stared at my parents like they're the worst people on the planet for letting their tiny kid watch this movie. I was hooked. So it became like at some point the transition occurred to, all right, we go and I'm going to find that just awful, whatever that, horror movie is, or whatever the cover looks cool. You talked about it with records. For me, it was movies, man. You see the front of Hellraiser and you go, I don't know what this is about. But I've got to find out. All the classics, like those were so big for me. I had to. I was hooked immediately. And like to this day, so October, I literally watch a horror movie every day in October. That I have to do that. That is my goal. So I'm ready. I know it's like September 6th or something, and I'm already just like literally shaking.
Amped.
I'm like ramped on physical media again. I sold everything a couple years ago. We're building it back up. So I have a notes app on my phone of these are the movies I'm specifically looking for if I come across them. So like we made it to what is it, Wreck-It Records in Chicago. We made it to 2 of them while we were there a couple days ago, and I've just literally got my notes app out. I'm like, I don't have this, I don't have that. Yeah, somebody's like grabbing versions of things. Like over the summer, I got like the 4K version of Santa Sangre because of course I have to own the Jodorowsky like Santa Sangre in 4K because of course I have to own that. I don't.
Is it the Severn? The Severn edition?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Severn.
Yeah,
I want shit. Probably Severn. I don't remember, man. I'm not that good about it. I'm sorry, but it's the one that just came out. Like I had it pre-ordered forever, and I finally just canceled it because it got delayed, and I found it like 2 weeks later. So,
so I mean, touching on that too, that was one of those things for the longest, up until maybe like the last 2 years. I was always trying, not to try to sound like an elitist or anything, but it was like I always wanted to find things out at shops, and it was always so much fun to be able to go through something and dig through a fucking, CD exchange or some shit like that.
Yeah,
and just sorting through things, and then finally finding something and be like, holy, it would be so much, it was so much cooler than going online and just seeing like, oh, well, it's $75. I guess I don't know. I guess I'll pick it up, And that was always such a draw too. So I love you mentioned seeing that out in the store because I was like, holy shit, there's not very many places around here now, like West Michigan, that you find a whole lot. I mean, there are some, in bigger cities, but especially around me, it's kind of hard finding that shit too. So I love that.
And you're not going to find you can find 8 copies of the reissue or the Redux of Halloween because everyone bought that. And they're never going to watch it again. But that's not what you're not going to find. Basket Case 3. Which I saw twice this weekend, which I thought was hilarious. You're not going to see those kind of weird gems. I didn't need Basket Case 3 for the $20 Blu-ray. I walked on that one, I'm sorry to say. But, just seeing stuff like that is cool. Like the fact that they had a cult section, they had like a B movie section was awesome. In line with their horror. Just to see. There were they must have had 50 Vinegar Syndrome sealed releases at the record shop I was at. Which I was just blown away. Yeah, I had no idea they were going to be that you would ever see that much of it instead of in one of those people that's hip to the Thanksgiving sale. Is ever going to have a collection like that? I never expected to see that in a store. It was super cool.
It's called Wreck-It Records. I don't think
I think that's what it is. There's 3 of them in Chicago. I'm sorry, I'm Reckless. I think it's Reckless. I don't know. I'm sure I'm getting this wrong. I'm sorry. I'm really bad with names of everything. One of my friends makes fun of me for it all the time. That I apparently don't care enough about names of things. He rides me inside. He just makes like band names that I'm getting wrong. He's just like, dude, do you not even pay attention? I'm like, nah, I really don't. It's like an independent Chicago record store that there's like three of them. I somehow in the last 8 weeks have been to all three. I was out there with my family back in July and we made it to one. So somehow I made it to all, or to three, maybe there's more, but made it to three different locations.
Oh shit!
And they're all sick.
Wow.
And they're just, I mean, great records. We got Tyler Short bought like 14 records this weekend, and everyone I was like, yeah, I totally get it. Like that's a really cool thing. So it's
that
awesome.
rules. My band's
stuff.
gonna be going through Chicago like in November, so I'm gonna have to write that place down to go.
Yeah,
and check
absolutely.
That out.
If I got it wrong, I'm sure you'll find, if you honestly search record store, like we
Yeah,
hit the dudes up at the Metro, and I was like, yo, is there a record store nearby? And the one dude was like, yes, this is what you're looking for. I was like, I know that place. Let's go.
Nice.
This is really cool. Yeah, definitely
Sweet.
worthwhile.
Okay, all right, sweet. All right, so you mentioned in the scene in Alien. Let me dig on to some scenes that are just forever ingrained in your brain. You mentioned that that the alien popping out of the chest.
Sure.
What are some scenes? Maybe even three, whether they're gross, scary, something that just fucked you up. What are some scenes that come to mind?
Sure. So like as a kid, I'll give you USA used to do like all the Stephen King movies. Like they just do in the middle of the afternoon, and they'd kind of cut them, but not really. So I remember being like just scared out of my pants for the clown in Poltergeist. Like the original I ride for the original Poltergeist. Anybody who says that movie isn't scary is I think is just being silly. Like the clown is crazy. Excuse me, the tree. That's just a scary movie. Like not the Carol Ann stuff. That son in that movie. I'm sure Carol Ann went through some stuff, but her brother is destroyed. Like that kid is never not wetting the bed ever. At like 40 years old, he's like, my clown attacked me. A tree like tried to drown me. Like he saw some stuff, man. My sister disappeared like while I was watching it happen. Like that dude. So that one, the clown, like forever ruined clowns for me for sure. Zelda, I think is her name in that was the other one when I was a kid. I watched in USA in Pet Sematary. The like sister.
Bam.
Which everybody has pointed that out. That is the creepiest part of that movie. That has nothing to do with the actual movie itself, but just that actress. Like to this day, it's ingrained in my brain of her just like walking around looking all creepy, and like it was brutal. And I know I forget what the disorder the illness she was dealing with in that movie. I don't recall what that was, or if they told you in the movie and I didn't read the book, but just absolutely messed me up. Like
totally agree.
I wasn't big on the like melt horror stuff that you saw a lot of. Like, I mean, everybody's watched Street Trash more than once, and it's probably the best at it. Like, that's had a lasting impact on me just from like, wow, this is what we're doing. Like, that's cool. But I will say, Fulci for me is the absolute best at those. Like, you can't forget these scenes. Ooh. He's so good at the insect stuff. I mean, like Phenomena, like all the she's controlling like insects. Like that's so cool. But City of the Living Dead, which I actually grabbed a Blu-ray copy of while I was up there. When the girl sees the priest, starts crying blood, and then vomits up 88 feet of freaking entrails. And you like watch the head shift to actually be like the fake head because this poor actress could only fit, the first 12 feet in her mouth. I'm not thinking of anything at least that I've seen where I've been so like sorrowful for the poor actor or actress that has to go through this moment. That's the one, dude. And that wasn't even that long ago that I came across that one. But it's like, nope, that's absolutely number one. I mean, he's done some amazing, incredible things, but like that's the one where I'm like, dude, you win there. Like you could bring all sorts of other things up, but that's the one where like, who would have thought of that? Such a cool idea.
Yeah. That is so insane. That is insane. Speaking of Severn, they recently, within the last year, they released a movie called Fulci for Fake. I don't know if you saw that or if you'd heard of it, but it's a documentary part film of this guy who is interviewing people who are directly involved with him as far as when he was going through like the filming process and going through, working on different movies, but then he also acts like him. So he portrays some of the things that he's talking about as well. It was a French director that made it, and it went through some different festivals and shit. really cool. Kind
Yeah,
of a
I'll check
cool
that out.
in-depth, you know, kind of behind the scenes, on Fulci and some shit that I'd never known about him, so,
For
and his
sure.
process especially. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you're interested in Fulci for sure,
Oh, absolutely.
it might even be something on, like, if you have Shutter, it might be something that's on there
I,
that you'd be able to check it out
I'm
even.
sure everything else is on Shutter that's in that kind of vein. I love it for sure. It's rad.
Right. So with Halloween being this next month, what are some things that are must haves on your list as far as for watching? And is there anything that you have on your list that you haven't seen before that you're excited for?
No, but I'm super interested in that. So I always start with Friday the 13th on day one, and I always end with
Ah,
the original Halloween on the 31st.
nice.
And if the weather is allowing it, which basically just means it's not raining, if it's cold, I don't care. We stream like one of the old, the old like Frankenstein or Dracula, any of the like black and white Bela Lugosi style guys. And then as the night gets later, we'll do Halloween. Like put it on a projector and put it up on my garage, and stream those
Mhm.
outside while kids are coming by and getting candy from us. So I know those will kind of be my bookends. Um, I got really last year. I got into the Fulci stuff that I hadn't seen. Um, I got really into, or I know those will be on the list this year. I got really into Vincent Price for some reason last year,
Oh
which I
yeah,
know a
okay.
lot of people kind of look at me strangely for having that weird nostalgic vibe, but like it was kind of just neat to see some of the elements of horror being employed without necessarily just trying to like gross me out or scare me. I've gone through all those movies. I own far too many
Hmm.
of them. Like I recently, over the last like 2 years, I've gone through a lot of the like unearthed stuff. I got Flowers the other day and went through
Oof.
that, and like, yeah, I don't know if it's horror. I don't know if it's scary. It
Yeah.
certainly elicits feelings. I don't know what it's.
Right.
I don't know what it says about me that it's not impression making a big impression on me. But I blame like Faces of Death and all that when I was a 14-year-old for
Oh
like
man.
showing me all. We've. I feel like a lot of people have been through all those. We've all watched some of the guinea pig movies. We've all watched some of those. It's not what does it for me in horror anymore. Like it was a thing for a long time, but I'm really
Hmm.
into the classics. Like I will watch Poltergeist. Um, I will watch American Werewolves in London. I will watch, kind of some of those guys. It just they 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 maybe don't bring out that like scary vibe in me anymore, but I just love that tension that they're really really good at doing. Um,
Yeah.
so those, and I'll find like you mentioned Shutter. Shutter will have something up there I've never seen before that they're pushing. I'll watch that. Trick or Treat, Trick or Treat, not Trick or Treat. I think I'm
Yeah.
getting the
Yeah.
sequence right
That's
because
a good
there's the
one.
two of them and one of them's absolute dog shit. But the like anthology
Yep.
one that's relatively recent, that movie's incredible. Probably one of
So
my
good.
favorite, more recent ones. We will definitely watch that early in the month. My wife likes that one too, so we can watch that one together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I'll definitely. I try to like at least hit 10 ones I have no idea about, and some of them will miss, and some of them won't. But you know, I always end up being like 35 or more. I always end up doubling up some days. Got to watch Prom Night again, or got to watch the Slumber Party Massacre 2. I can watch it. I love that.
Yeah.
The dude with the giant guitar with the drill bit. Like, let's do all those. I don't know if
So
classics is the
sick.
word, but we'll knock a bunch of those out.
Nice. Right. I mean that's awesome. Hopefully you post some of the stuff on here and I can see what it is that you're watching. And
I
I'm gonna probably be doing something relatively similar as well. And
love it.
I
Yeah,
always
I
try to.
do. In my story, I'll put it up every day when I'm watching.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. Very cool. I might have to do something. I might have to do something like that too, and kind of get some things in mind. Looking at my collection of some things for some watches this next month for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Look, this has been our time. I'm gonna have to have you on probably again once this next record comes out to talk some of that and maybe even some of the watches that you went through in October here. But this is I do have this one finale here. I wanted to rack your brain a little bit with and see kind of if we bring it back to the '90s. All right, so have you ever heard of the movie Judgment Night?
No, I don't think I know that one.
All right, so 1993, there's a movie that came out called Judgment Night, and basically what happened was the movie came out, and the soundtrack was even more successful than what the movie was. The
Okay.
movie was a big box office, but the soundtrack it had different mashups as far as you had like Slayer with like God, what was it? Ice-T, I think. You had all
Okay.
these metal bands and hardcore bands with different members of like the hip hop community or R&B. It was insane. So,
Sick. Yeah. Okay.
what I was going to ask you, if a movie's coming out in the next couple of years here, and they reached out, let's say the Inclination, they say, look, man, we want you guys to work with an artist outside of the hardcore community on one track here for this movie. What franchise would you love to be
Oh
a
my
part of,
gosh.
and who would be an artist to have on this bad boy?
Oh my gosh. That's a brutal question. I love it. All right. Franchise is probably easier for me, and I maybe get flack for this. I would love to see a proper Hellraiser done. A
Yeah.
reboot of
Oh,
the first one, because so many of
I'm
the
all
sequels
there.
since have been so bad. But with what they can do now, I would love to just see, or even like a prequel origin. They would absolutely screw it up, but if they didn't, that would be that would be just insane. Like that for me, I know it's absolute heresy to like redo a movie like that. Of course, they've done it to all the others, but like that's
Yep.
one that I would say to make it like darker than it is would just be insane and certainly possible.
Yeah.
And there's guys out there that could do it, or women out there that could do it that would just blow it out of the park. That for me would be one I'd love to see as far as from a
Nice.
franchise goes. Artist, you're talking like big picture, anybody just kind of outside of the hardcore scene.
Anybody?
You're gonna let me be anybody, okay? Um, man, man. All right,
Maybe
just to
even
keep
an
it.
old jazz guitarist. Maybe I'm just somebody to add a little, something outside of the hardcore, the
Yeah,
metal
for
feel of the
sure.
band.
No, for sure. This is hard just because there's so much out there. So I am a massive fan of like the late '80s, early '90s hip hop stuff that just had that vibe. Like before, kind of I would say more hip hop before I would go to like rap. I feel
Hmm.
like you can make a case that there's a difference between them. They certainly are intertwined. But
Totally.
um, I love the Roots, but I would have to say Tribe. Like I'd love to see Tribe get
Oh
involved in
man.
anything. I don't know how many times I've watched like their documentaries, how many times I listen to those records. Just the vibe and the musicianship on what they do there. Um, it's so unique compared to anything that you hear today. And I think it was probably more, you certainly heard more stuff like that then, but you had full
Hmm.
band compositional pieces, even if they were sampling it from somewhere else, like they were viewing it as like, let's make it a band sound, let's incorporate instrumentation. I mean, the Roots obviously still use that sort of stuff today. And I know Tribe is obviously done with Fife, but like, um,
Hmm.
I think working with those guys and just the way their brains work would be so come from such a different place. I would love, I get the impression they're so musically like inclined and so into music as an art, not just in a, like this
Yeah.
is where we work in music. Like let's do it. I would just love to hear a perspective like that. Um, Errol Garner's my favorite jazz anything. He's a pianist. Has a record called Live by the Sea or
Okay. Yeah.
Concert by the Sea that will just change the way
Yep.
you listen to like jazz piano. It's forever old, but he's a metal amazing. I would love to hear what he would have to say, but I can't imagine he would look at us and go, "Just dude, stop! Like you shouldn't be doing like you're just bastardizing music in general. Like this is how you do this." And I'd go, oh, "Yes, sir, you're absolutely correct. I'm going to sit over here and just listen." So yeah, I would love to hear what Tribe would say about it. Like any of those dudes.
Man,
Like
that'd
what?
be so sick.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it sounds like, but I'll listen to them. I'll do what they say for sure.
Yeah. Nice. That is awesome, man. That's awesome. Just something kind of fun, but even just to kind of throw a little bone out there and see what catches. And honestly, I have to say, Hellbound. I actually like that movie better than the original Hellraiser,
Nice. Okay.
which a lot of people isn't popular, but the original one's fine. I think it's just the energy and kind of the tone that the second one brought to play. Where I was like, they could certainly remake that movie and have it be fucking badass.
Dude, I mentioned it a while back. It's like the world building, and that one builds the world. Like the fact that you
Yes,
actually go
yes,
down and see like the creation of I forget what the guy's name is, but the Cenobite that's like hanging
yeah.
around. And God, what was the movie recent? Oh, friggin' the most recent Star Wars movie completely rips that. Like the whole Darth Sidious? I'm a terrible Star Wars fan because the
Okay.
last three didn't do much for me. But like whatever the final iteration of the bad guy is in the most recent Star Wars in number 9 completely comes
Mhm.
from Hellraiser. He's like hanging around by a thing and looking all evil and straight off of whatever the Cenobite is. When is it Kirsty's dad that gets sucked by, or the doctor that gets sucked down there? Like it's
Oh
completely knocked off
yeah.
of that. I can't see it any other way. I was watching it going, this is Hellraiser. You're killing me here. Um, I don't know what that says about me, but yeah,
Damn, I'm
no,
gonna have
that
to
I
go back to
actually don't
watch that
disagree with
again.
you. I
Shit, I
think
don't
that's
think I ever.
probably you didn't see that. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's just me and my brain's weird in that way, and I was just so unhappy that I wanted to like grab back to something I like. Um,
I mean, look, there's been lots of times that my wife will sit and fucking hit me in the arm or some shit and be like, dude, this isn't that horror movie. Stop. And I'm like, look, the way that they're presenting this dialogue and the what's going on in the
yeah,
background,
yeah, yeah,
they got this from this.
for
So
sure.
I am so there. Way too much, unfortunately. But I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, dude, this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and the craft, and I look forward to the new album, my man.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Good times.
Yeah, take care.
All
You
right, man.
stay
Take
safe
care.
and stay healthy, my man.
Sure thing. Goodbye.
Bye, dude. This
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.